Well, good evening, everyone. The time is now 7 p.m. and I would like to call to order the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee Subcommittee on Safety. As the first order, I'd like to confirm that we have those in attendance and that we have a quorum. So if when I call your name, if you could confirm that you are here, I'd appreciate that. Mary Beth Miller?
It's Barker, but I'm here.
Mary Beth Barker, thank you. Thank you, you're here. And Dorcas Miller. And you're on mute, if you could just go on mute so we could hear you. Well, I will note that Dorcas has confirmed and I can visually see her. So I believe that we can consider her in attendance. And with that, we have a quorum so we can begin our discussion.
It looks like Dorcas might be having some technical trouble. Maybe we should just make sure are you?
Let's see, Dorcas, I don't know what I can do. Maybe let's see if I can unmute you.
There you go. You did it.
You did it. Good for you.
Am I here?
Yes,
Hello.
I can hear you. Okay. Thank you for Mary Beth for suggesting that we wait just a moment. Great. Okay. And I do acknowledge our committee chair, Nat Welch, who we didn't need for a quorum, but I do want to acknowledge that he is joining and will be joining us, and we have one member of the public. And so we have acknowledged that we have our quorum, which is great. And I would like to now commence with our agenda. The first order of business is to review and approve the minutes of 9/6. Those minutes were provided to the 3 members of the subcommittee, including myself. Are there any comments or changes or requests for changes to those minutes?
Good to me. I vote we accept them.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the minutes. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second. Let's take a roll call to confirm that the minutes are accepted. Dorcas Miller?
Aye.
Mary Beth Barker?
Aye.
I also say aye, so the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is to discuss the 9/15/2022 multi-town meeting, which was organized by the Friends of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and it was held in the Concord, Massachusetts Fowler Library. We'll commence with the discussion of the committee members, but then we would like to open it up to the members of the public that either attended or wish to ask questions, etc. And then we'll continue with the balance of the items. I think it will flow nicely into the items that we have. Earlier today, I did send out, and you may not have seen it, with apologies. I probably sent it a little late. I did send out the minutes from the multi-town meeting. Thank you very much, Marcia. She sent those a while ago. I just sent them out. But I do have those handy. And so what I thought I would do in full transparency for all of us is to really just first, they're very short. I'm going to read them and then we'll have a discussion. And I'll add some of my commentary since I, in fact, was there, and Nat, I know, was there. And I believe, Dorcas, you were there as well. Mary Beth, I apologize. Were you there as well?
No, I was not there.
Okay. So I'll make some general comments. Incredibly well-attended meeting. Very constructive dialogue. Everybody was participating. There seemed to be participants from, and I know Marcia, by the way, attended, so Marcia can weigh in as well. There were participants from all of the towns that are either today or will be along the line of the Bruce Freeman. That was very encouraging. The moderator was incredibly efficient, and that was so helpful to make sure that we actually achieved our objective. The objective was to draft a set of rules. And then at the end, there were some additional items that we tagged on, which we'll get to in a minute. So as the document indicated, what we discussed are universal, uniform rules. And they're very simple. Yield to pedestrians, keep right past left, give audible signal when passing, do not block trail. And then below that, there are some additional rules that, we'll talk about this, I think, during our discussion, may not need as much prominence, but perhaps can go at more targeted points. Wear helmets, leash pets, remove waste, no littering, carry in, carry out, respect property adjacent to the trail. And so these were the uniform rules that were posted. And as you can see, the thought is that we would have one sign on which all 8 rules are posted, along with a QR code for further information, and we can give more details, and again, we can discuss what we think that should be. But then we'll have one sign in which the first 4 rules are posted on top of a sign in larger print, and then the last 4 would be in smaller print. The next option would be have 2 different signs, one with the top 4 rules posted frequently along the trail, very easy to read, and then another sign with all 8 rules, but only at trailheads, kiosks, and parking lots. As you can see from my discussion, the third was my recommendation, and that was based on the rides I've had in other rail trails. So again, to restate, the top 4, yield to pedestrians, keep right past left, give audible signal when passing, do not block trail. And it occurs to me, I could be sharing my screen now, so I apologize, just so everybody can see what I'm looking. Oh, that's disabled. So I don't know, Marcia, do you want to? You can share it if you have access, or I can share my.
What I can do is make you a co-host, and then you can you'll be able to share.
Okay, great. Let me know when I should try.
You should try again.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, 1 second. I have to bring this back out. All right. And let me just make sure I pull up the right document, because I have a lot of documents open. Okay, so let me make sure everybody can see my screen. Let me pause. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so the top 4 in bold are the ones that we have some choices. Excuse me, the 4 below are the ones we have choices. The ones at the top, without question, everybody agreed those should be front and center, large font. Everybody should easily be able to see these. The ones at the bottom, the question is, do we want those on the same sign, but smaller? And let me just scroll down and show you these 3 items. Again, one sign on which all 8 rules are posted along with the QR code, have 2 different signs, or number 3, excuse me, I apologize, have one sign in which the 4 rules are posted and the last 4 are in smaller, and then have 2 different signs. We don't have to decide this today, but I wanted to bring this up because this is exactly consistent with the purpose of this committee, which is, what are our principles? What is our scope? We can make the decision today that we have an opinion. We can vote on that opinion, and we can submit that to the full committee by virtue of these minutes and by me sending an email to Nat and to Adrian Boardman. So we have some choices. I would recommend that we all discuss these principles and give our thoughts to the full committee, because it's consistent with what we'll be talking about. But let me pause there. And actually, one more thing. What we then concluded in the meeting is that, as we've done, that these principles would be brought back to our respective groups, and the full committee will figure out, you know, who is that group in Concord that would have to ultimately weigh in. And then that feedback would be brought back to the Friends, and they're hoping, you know, again, that would be done through the winter so that the signage can be built by the Friends for the spring. Lastly, there were some other steps that were not mentioned here, but it briefly here. You'll see that they do want to reconvene again to discuss the sign placement, the artwork, and other issues such as e-bikes and speed limits. And then what's not on here is the one that I had suggested, is that we meet again to decide how that group, the Friends, could interact with other similar groups like the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee, as there are many. And so those items were tabled. And so with that, let me just pause and let me just scroll all the way up so you can see these. And I'll time box. I know it's 7:11. I think we should have a good 5-minute discussion on these principles that the Friends came up with in the context of our mission, which is to decide what do we think safety principles for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee should be recommending to the full committee. What is the scope? So I'll pause there and open it up first for our attendees, and then we can open up to the public.
I think these universal uniform rules are pretty basic and probably apply to the entire trail. I have some more that I want to add. But I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think that the other towns have had more experience with this, and I think probably it worked pretty well.
And when you say add more, would you want to add more that maybe could be in that QR code that I mentioned, and just so everybody can sort of visualize it? If you're riding your bike on the rail trail and you come to, for example, in Concord, Commonwealth Avenue, where we had that full stop right by the park, Junction Park, there would be a big sign, and it would have the 4 principles. It would have I'm just pretending this might not be the way it is, have the 4 bold, have the small, but then there'd be a QR code to say, click here to read more. Are your principles ones that you feel like, they got to be bold, or they're the smaller ones, or would you be content with them in the QR code where people could click and learn more?
I think everyone's assuming that everybody has a cell phone.
This is true.
I don't think I would use my cell phone to do a QR code.
Okay.
I think there's a problem because I don't think everybody does have a cell phone. I've seen on the trail this week pretty young ones. I'm not sure they have cell phones. I think that's something we cannot assume.
Okay. If we, and so basically the premise is that people are on the rail trail, they don't have an iPhone, or excuse me, they don't have a device. And now you're sort of requiring them to maybe get a, you know, maybe even have to write something down, even if we had an email address, they'd have to write it down and look at it later.
I think there ought to be a speed limit, okay? Right off the top, right there at the beginning. Anyway, I cannot assume that everyone has a cell phone. Number one, the bicycle pamps are pretty tight. Might not be a whole lot of room for a cell phone. I don't think we need to assume that there's a cell phone.
Yeah. So we have to figure out a different way, whether it's by making an email that they can just remember and go, or a web address, you know, don't have a cell phone, you know, when you get home, access, BFRT.com. I'm making this up. So at least they could just say, oh yeah, that's right. And they could Google it and then they would find it.
You're assuming they want to find it. That would be how personally, I'm out there on the bike. I'm on the rail trail. I'm not really interested in going home and looking up some rules.
I got it. So in the meeting, we talked extensively about speed limit and we tried. But what we decided is we had to table it for the next meeting. Marcia or not, you know, or those others in attendance, you could certainly correct me, but I don't think anybody was against having a sign that said the speed limit. I think the question was, what is the number? And they were kind of got really heated. And so we just tabled it.
There were multiple suggestions for what the speed would be. And then there was an issue about speed is associated with different locations. There are some areas where it may be more appropriate to keep it 10 miles per hour. There are others where it might be 15 or 20. And so I think that's why it got tabled, is that we could not come to an agreement over a uniform speed. There was agreement over the uniform rules that have been outlined here.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's very important. One consideration is we need to have a speed limit. We don't see those on the rules as part of the sort of final progression. We'd want to make sure that that happens.
I think we also probably need a weight limit because we don't really want to see golf carts on the rail trail.
Okay, and I think I know I haven't experienced a golf cart, but I experienced bikes that looked like they were almost motorcycles, and I can't for the life of me figure out, you know, I know that they're an e-bike, but these huge wheels, it looks scary. You know, if I was a little person, and I am a little person, I'm only 5'1.5", you know, that would be scary to me. And so I totally appreciate what you're saying. I think that that's not necessarily a bad rule, but the question is, you know, how do we describe that? And maybe the answer is that's not going to make it to the top 4. And if the consensus is of this group that it has to make it to the top 4, then we should certainly talk about that. What is that? I have no idea. I don't know enough about e-bikes to know what an e-bike weight is. I don't know enough about bikes.
I think the numbers I came up with from a little bit of research I did was 20 miles an hour and 70 pounds.
Okay. And that's just the bike itself. That doesn't include the people on the bike.
No, it's just the bike
Okay.
or whatever, whatever it is, but
Okay.
we don't want motorcycles. We don't want golf carts. We just don't want the big heavy equipment.
In all candor, does it have to be 70? That seems really heavy. Why 70?
Oh,
So
I don't care, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying a golf cart or a motorcycle definitely weigh more than 70. So 70 was the number I came up with.
Okay. Mary Beth, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I have something to say about a bunch of items, so let me.
Okay.
On the signage, I do kind of prefer choosing what 4 messages we want to put in bold and the other messages in either on a separate sign, well, on the same sign, but in a smaller print. That would be the format on signage that I kind of favor. I think you can take in 4 things easier than taking in all 8. On the issue of speed limit, I think that maybe the speed limit can be no more than 20, but there are times that it's inappropriate to be going 15 or 16. And the speed limit really varies according to what part of the trail you're on, how many people are around you, and what's going on around you. I think that what kind of gets lost here when we focus on concrete rules are some of the general principles, more or less, that we wanted it to be based on, which was kind of courtesy, care, and caution, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yes, 20 is fine. I guess it's like somehow the messaging needs to be use courtesy, use care, use caution.
Yeah. I like
And,
that.
and you can't do that if you're going 20 miles an hour in some parts of the trail. Other parts, it's fine, and there's no
Right.
problem. So that's an issue we've got to sort of figure out how to communicate. But I agree that it shouldn't be any more than 20. That seems unnecessary to go faster and unsafe to go faster. I think that on the weight issue, I know you're talking about golf carts and heavy e-bikes, but you get people, you know, those electric wheelchairs that people use, those things weigh 300 pounds.
That's good.
And you can't just, you know, so it's more of an issue than weight. It's really size. You know, golf carts are probably too wide to fit on a trail that's 12 feet in terms of, you know, allowing people to pass. Those heavy bikes, I think to get into that now is probably premature, because I feel like I don't know enough about whether the class of bikes that we've talked about, you know, seeming to be okay, the class 1s and 2s are, I don't know how weight relates to what class a bike is at all. I just need more understanding of all that. And when we get to the e-bike discussion and e-bike decisions and policies, that's probably when the weight stuff might come in. I don't really know. So what else was there? There was the weight, there was the speed, there was the signage. And then there was just that, like, I just want to find a way to return to that, putting out that message, like, use courtesy, use care, use caution, you know, that kind of a message.
And are you suggesting that when we, as a Bruce Freeman rail trail, when they adopt these universal rules, that they should include, if not that slogan, but something like a slogan? Are you suggesting that?
Yeah. If we can, without being too cumbersome and wordy, I think.
Right. Almost
I
like a
would like
backdrop.
Yeah, I would like to see that. Yeah.
I feel like somebody there made that exact. Does anybody else remember that in the meeting? I feel like somebody said that. I feel like there was a gentleman across from me who said something like that.
I didn't catch what it was, but
I feel like somebody said almost the same thing, and they rattled off like a logo. I just thought this is bringing up a memory from the meeting. Okay, I'm sensitive to time because we have a number of items on the agenda, but I do feel like this discussion is really leading us to the rest. So what I'm hearing is that we don't disagree with anything that's here, but we and Nate, I'll pause because I see you've raised your hand. Go ahead.
so just to put this in context, this is a gathering of all the towns, and this is what they kind of agreed to. I think so the question is, what's our role with these 8 rules? And I think our role is, if we violently disagree with any one of them, we should raise it. If not, then what we're doing is we are in the end, the town has a responsibility to decide whether or not they're going to use it. So each representative is going to go to the appropriate town authority and decide this, and then the Friends are going to pay for this sign. The speed limit, the e-bikes, those are all knotty, KNOTTY issues that I think there'll be a lot more discussion about it. But the thought was to try and get a uniform set of signs, and this was kind of the MacGuffin, if you know Hitchcock films. This is a MacGuffin to get the towns together to start to have a regular conversation. So I think from this subcommittee to the committee, if you see anything that's really off that you don't agree with, you guys should say, at the next meeting, we don't like it. We just want to tell the town we don't like it. But if you're okay with it, then let the full committee know, and Marcia can carry that message for us. The only thing I'd point out, Deborah, is that the 4 are yield to pedestrian, new line, keep right, pass left, give audible signal when passing, new line, do not block trail.
Yeah, they made a mistake here.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the letter actually is correct. I'm looking at a copy of the letter. But
Okay, good.
it's not bad. So that I was just trying to bring back to what's the work of the subcommittee on this issue.
Thank you for that. And
Thank
I think that's what we had understood. And what I'm hearing is that there's no violent disagreement with anything here, but I am hearing that we'd like to bring forward the reminder that speed limit is important, and we recognize that it's been delayed, but we'd like to be, again, we will continue to be part of that conversation. And in terms of the use of the QR code, what I heard is we're not disagreeing with the use of the QR code, but we want recognition of the fact that some people are going to not have their mobile device. And so we should provide people, even with a very simple website, that they can remember, for example. So those are the 2 things that I've heard. And then the third thing that I heard that I'd like to bring forward to the full committee is that we recommend that the Friends consider wrapping a logo around this, as I believe was discussed in the meeting, that logo to be incorporated, and that gives us that bigger picture. Did I summarize that?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And I think we did have a member of the public. So let me, before we move off this topic, we have one member of the public. And before we do that, Marcia, you have a question or a comment?
I just want to clarify, were you talking, the Friends have a logo. Are you talking about a tagline or a slogan?
A tagline, sorry, tagline.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And so I'd like to open up to the one member of the public that we have on this particular topic. If the member has any questions, you can come off mute, and if you don't have to.
Hi, this is Bill Posner. I'm a member of the Transportation Committee, but I'm just speaking on my own behalf tonight. I just want to say you guys are doing a great job. We're off to a great start. And the only 2 cents that I would have to throw on the table would be that you might want to take a look at the signs and the rules that have been created for the Minuteman Bikeway, pretty easily accessible with a Google search. They're pretty similar to what you're suggesting, with a little bit different flavor, and that might inform your thinking about this.
Thank you. We will note that and pass that forward to the full committee, and perhaps we'll even be able to Google it and send that to the full committee. Thank you, Phil. That's a great recommendation. For point of order, I didn't ask Phil his address because Phil already indicated that he was on the Concord Transportation Committee, but was speaking in his role as a private citizen.
So yeah, I'm at 223 Losbrook Road is my address.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will go back to our agenda. So the next topic is to discuss this, and this is the meat of the discussion, discuss the scope and principles for the safety subcommittee. In preparation for today, we all of us thought about this topic, and in fact, We had some feedback from the members, which I forwarded before the meeting began. And that input had to do with what are the behaviors that we're looking to reinforce? What are the principles then that would reinforce those behaviors? What is the scope of the work that we will do, which again will be potentially quite limited in duration, but might form future actions of the town? Do we want to be specific about vehicle type and other issues such as trail design? And then we've lastly asked what would be outside the scope of the safety subcommittee. And just to sort of bring us right back, to the, keep the end in mind, if you will. We are here to functioning as a safety subcommittee of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee. Given the rapid change and the scope of types of users of the committee, there has been discussion and concerns posed to the broader committee because of the increased usage, which we know is due to a variety of reasons, including expansion of the rail trail. And so this safety subcommittee was formed to really ask the question, what are those behaviors that we espouse? What are the principles that we would espouse? And then we go from there, and we'll think about what does that mean? What does done look like as a safety subcommittee? Are we done, for example, when we report out to the larger committee as to the behavior and the principles? Are we done when we, for example, recommend some periodic awareness campaign that Concord itself would be responsible for and or work in conjunction with the Friends? So the first step is let's talk about behaviors and principles. And again, I can share my screen, but I believe I had sent this out to you beforehand. And these behaviors, in my thinking, link up well with the reminders that we talked about, but they are not all inclusive. For example, they do include speed and then messaging that asks users to, as I believe that was you, Mary Beth, said, ask users to use care, caution, and what was the third?
I don't know if I remember.
Consideration.
Something, courtesy.
Courtesy, right?
Courtesy sort of being the overriding thing.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's the overarching, behaviors, care, courtesy. Sorry.
Caution.
Thank you.
It doesn't
I have to
matter.
write that down. We have to
Caution,
write that down.
Care or whatever. Yeah.
And then if you think about it, what flows from that would be riding at the right speed, no more than given circumstances. Pass on the left, using an audible signal when you do that. Stop and stand off the trail. Keep your pets on a leash. So you can see that when you have the overarching behaviors, care, courtesy, caution, that lends itself to the principles. But there's some additional ones. For example, respond to and keep record of user complaints and reports related to accidents or unsafe behaviors. So let's pause here and think about this concept of behaviors. And as a group, if we want to come to an agreement on what the behaviors are, and then we've already talked about the principles, so we don't have to talk as much, but let's go back to these behaviors. what do we think about this notion of an overarching statement of behaviors?
I think Mary Beth's, trio of words would be useful to put here and there, kind of on the trail, just that as a single sign. Just remind people. I'm a pretty wobbly kind of bike rider. I ride, but I'm not real. I'm cautious and a little wobbly. And I would think, I was riding yesterday or the day before yesterday, and I had a guy go by me. He looked like he was going 30 miles an hour at least, maybe more. No signal, nothing.
Yeah.
I almost crashed because I just, as I say, I'm a little on the wobbly side, and I felt really sort of traumatized. Maybe that sign here and there on the trail would be a good thing to remind people.
First, I'm sorry that you went through that. And I think that our worlds are getting more and more diverse, which is terrific. But that means we do need reminders. We're not saying that person was intentionally discourteous, but perhaps it wasn't top of mind.
I just didn't think. Yeah. I wouldn't mind having those 3 words every now and then on the trail, on a little sign.
Mhm.
I don't know if that would help, but if not, it's a nice principle.
And sort of what I've been thinking about, Adrienne didn't join us today, but I was chatting a little bit with her. When they went through the Junction effort, the Junction Park effort, the first thing they did, and actually I was talking to, I'm just blanking on her name, the co-chair of the Junction Park effort. I'm embarrassed that I'm forgetting her name.
Tracy.
Thank
Tracy.
you. So Tracy was reminding me that the first thing they had to do was create their guidepost, right? And then everything they did was looked at in light of that guidepost. So every one of the pictures, every one of the ideas, they said, okay, does this agree with our principles? And I think that's sort of where we're coming out here, is that, and I'm not saying we're there yet, that possibly our recommendation to the full committee was that we, as a full committee, adopt some form of this easy to remember care, courtesy, caution, and then let that be the guidepost for the signs that we take to the friends, to the awareness that the town of Concord will put up and periodically rebroadcast, to other things that happen, like the speed limit, and so on. So that's what I'm hearing, is that something like those 3 would be our overarching principles. Let me, again, before we open it up to those, the public, do I have any agreement that what we could take to the full committee is the adoption of a simple set of these principles, such as we have decided here?
It seems that that these principles that we're talking about are not any different from the principles that we talked about in addressing Junction Park, and that they maybe apply to all of Concord's rail trail. I mean, if we're talking now just about our role in the town of Concord, they apply to the whole rail trail. And I think that we kind of came to that conclusion when we were talking about Junction Park. So I don't know whether what we're doing, I mean, we can say this to the whole committee, but I don't know if it feels redundant or not. I guess it's a question I have. I don't know.
Okay.
Looks like Nat is trying to say.
That just a thought. I mean, I think one thing you could do is play a little bit with these three principles around a particular topic, like the speed limit, right? So if you were to apply those principles to discussion around the speed limit, how would care fit in? Courtesy and caution, right? I think the three that you said. Does it help you make a decision? You know, to say this is kind of what we want to go after, and care and caution feels somewhat similar. That's I'm coming to the end of my intellectual moment here. So I just wanted to say those two things. One is, you don't have to come next week with a set of principles necessarily, but it feels like you're heading in a certain direction, and you can kind of test whether or not a particular idea, a problem you're trying to solve, a question you have, whether you can kind of apply those principles in a way that helps you get clarity on what the solution is. So that's how I think about the principles from Junction Park, were things like, you have to think about aesthetics and you want to keep the park welcoming, right? So there were a couple of designs that we come up with that each of us had different opinions, but some of them, for me, a couple of them were less aesthetically pleasing than others. So that was a good guiding principle that helped to kind of narrow down where we wanted to go. I guess my other thing is, I don't think you necessarily have to finalize the principles this time around. You can, you can discuss other stuff. You can decide what topics you want to hit, and continue this conversation as you guys think about what these principles of the safety committee are. You have a pretty broad remit from the full committee, I think. Almost anything that you talk about could be, come into the safety piece. So your lens, if you will, your conscience, you are the safety conscience of the overall committee, both when you hear separately, but also when you're sitting in the full group. So I'll stop there.
Selfishly, I kind of was hoping we could at least accomplish that today, because I know you have the meeting next week. So I was kind of hoping we could, just get that done.
We're not gonna give you a bad grade.
No, and I'm not going to be there, so I don't know who's going to take it forward. So
and it's on the 12th. It's not next week. I think it's the week after. Is when the full meeting is.
Is it? But if it's a Wednesday, I still can't go. So if it's a Wednesday, I can't go. Yeah.
I don't remember what day it is, because I'm going to be in Croatia. I'm going to be in Croatia.
So.
No, that's not allowed.
It is a Wednesday. Yeah, it's a Wednesday.
I do want to acknowledge what you said, that care and caution seem similar. So I was almost thinking caution, courtesy, and then I think of common sense, because technology is changing so much that we can't, we can't have this particular type or that, e-bike, scooter, who knows, so we have to, almost with what Dorcas, you said, got to use common sense. If you're going through a really crowded area, it ain't going to be 20 miles an hour. Probably gonna have to go 5.
Can I also just say one other thing? You just and Deb, I had sent you an introduction to Galen Mook of Mass Bikes. He's the executive director of Mass Bikes, but he said something that I thought it's really been sitting with me for the last 12 hours, which
not
is
the device, it's the person.
It's about the user, not the device. Right. And so there's something there, I think, that as you think about safety, it's about the user, not the device that they're on. So I just throw that out there. I'm not saying you should add it, but I really like that. And here's a person who spent a lot of time on a lot of issues. related to biking. And our trail is not just a biking trail.
No, it's a walking trail.
Let's keep
Mary
that in
Beth, did you
mind.
have a?
No,
Mary
I
Beth?
was having a private reaction in that it, although I agree that it does make sense. It is the user, not the device. It reminded me too much about guns don't kill people too.
It's so funny you said that, Mary Beth.
Oh, I
'Cause
was kinda like,
I said the
"Ooh, I
same
know that."
thing.
Yeah,
I said the
really.
same thing back to Galen when he told me that. And
Oh, really?
but there is this principle that we are humans, right? We're human beings and we use tools and we use things. And I think there is, while the, you know, the firearm one is certainly not a pleasant one, I think there is a universal truth that we need to take as human beings, take responsibility for our behaviors. And I know that Debbie, you all three of you, I think, have talked about behaviors as being important. So anyway, I don't want to overwhelm the committee with the idea, but I just wanted to share. I thought it's I think a powerful viewpoint. So
Well,
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to say, I really think that the common sense is a great thing, as opposed to one of the other ones I had. I just add, to add that as with courtesy and common sense might be just enough to do it, right? I like that idea.
Yeah,
As
I
one
like
of-
caution,
one of-
just.
One of the
but-
C's.
Yeah,
Yeah, will our 8-year-olds riding their bikes understand that?
common
Hmm.
sense.
Good question.
No,
Yeah.
but I do hope that an 8-year-old on the rail trail has a mother, father, caregiver, responsible party who gives them, and this is something we have talked about, is parents, or again, I say parents, the caregiver for the 8-year-old has got to give them an overview. And that's why I have this, I haven't talked to you guys about, I have this idea that I talked to the Rails to Trails Conservancy about, piloting a elementary school quick video, that if the children in elementary school take this quick video, they'll get like a badge and they'll prominently be able to wear that when they ride the rail trail. Because I don't know what the parents are telling them. I don't know, but I do know this, is that most kids in the United States go to school. And if we can, create this pilot. So I agree with you, 8-year-old, I don't know, but I do know that the caregiver should know that they're on the rail trail and be able to remind them. So let me suggest the following. As a follow-up in the minutes, we'll put forth courtesy, caution, common sense. And then as a group, you'll reply back, not to all collectively, but individually. And then, hopefully within the next week. And then if we can come to a consensus by the time of our next meeting, then we can adopt those principles. And when you do, you'll give consideration for this notion of what I call accountability. And if one of our principles should say anything we do on the rail trail should reinforce accountability of the user. And that gets to Nat's point of it's not the vehicle, it's the user. But maybe we can just make it a little bit more wordy and just as a separate principle and say, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee, everything it does and it recommends is also about personal accountability. So my suggestion is that we put this in the minutes. We'll then be able to respond back to the minutes. And then the next time we meet, we'll officially conclude what we think the principles are. Does that seem like a good approach?
Fine with me.
And I will need a motion. Somebody has to sort of read back what I just said in simple form.
I can try to do that.
Oh, and I'm sorry, before we do that, I do want to acknowledge the public has a comment. I apologize, hold that thought. Phil, please speak.
Thanks. So this is like a good segue in a sense. I had 2 points I wanted to make. One is that communication with regard to issues like this doesn't just stop at signs. And I hope that the committee takes the opportunity to think through how it might communicate with the public through various means. So, you know, one of the things we were talking about is kids, which I'm going to pick up again in a second. But there are lots of different ways to communicate with the public, including the various bike clubs that use the trail, running clubs, lots of different organizations that are involved with the Bruce Freeman. And those might be channels for communication that you might want to consider to amplify the message. And then the message always, there's no end to it. You know, that's, I think, the other element to it is it's not just a one and done that you put up a sign and you're finished with safety. I mean, it's always a continuing thing because of the way the transportation is changing, amongst other things. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, and this is really a good segue, you were talking about the kids. So I wanted to mention to this committee in particular that the town is a participant in the Safe Routes to School program. That program does some of the kinds of things that you mentioned, Deborah, which is to, you know, communicate with the grade school, the primary school children about safety on bikes, on scooters, as pedestrians. The event that the Safe Routes program is using to highlight those issues is coming up the week after Columbus Day. So on the rail trail in particular, the kids will gather on Thursday, October 13th. Some of them will be coming down from way up, almost at the Carlisle line near the Middlesex School, but they'll gather at the parking lot for the rail trail next to the prison, and then they'll parade down and into the neighborhood that's adjacent to the Rowe School. So for any of you folks who are interested in seeing how that event works, or maybe even volunteering, let me know offline and I'll give you all the details. And Deborah, I'll just send you, once I get your email, the links to the state program and the stuff we've done at the local level as well. So thanks.
That would be great. And I'll put my, I know, oh, messaging is turned off. Nat and Marcia have my email address so they can get that to you.
Yep.
That is terrific. I did get that email, and we'll add in the minutes the email that you had sent, so that Mary Beth and Dorcas, and I believe I had sent it, but we'll put it in the minutes as well, so they have it again. They can decide if they're able to join. And it sounds like then, you know, as we go forward, there are potential avenues for awareness. Let me focus on one thing that I heard that I think is very important, that I might suggest that we add to a principle, that from a safety and a subcommittee perspective, another principle is steady drip, drip, drip of awareness. You know, you could use the word continuous awareness. So I think that's a principle that we could all agree on. And then when issues and ideas come up, that's something else to sort of put in the lens. And so I think we now have perhaps 4 principles, starting with the bottom, which is ongoing safety awareness. So that's one principle. And next is individual accountability. The next would be common sense. The next would be courtesy. And I think those are the ones that you know, we've talked about today. And if we could have a motion to put those in the minutes, and then we can all agree when we meet again, that would be terrific.
Do we really need a motion to put them in the minutes? I don't know.
Marcia?
I'm taking the minutes, so that's why I'm asking.
I don't think you need a motion unless unless you're all in agreement that those are the 4 principles that you're going to be using to go forward. That's all you really need. And you can.
Okay. Do we want more time, or do we want to use these 4 principles?
Could you repeat the one just before courtesy after individual accountability.
Continuous awareness.
That's ongoing safety awareness. That was the
Yes,
last one.
ongoing safety awareness, yeah.
I missed one.
Oh,
Mary Beth?
so we have
Okay.
common sense.
Common sense.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's what it was. I missed that too.
Thank you.
Yeah, common sense, courtesy, accountability, continuous awareness. I'm trying for the C's. We're going to work on the C's.
Okay, so don't vote them in yet. Put them in the minutes as this is under discussion.
Okay, so there you go. We don't need a vote. Okay, great. All right. So
I
please.
just have a question for the minutes to Phil. Phil, what was the name of the organization that's organizing the meeting on October 13th on the trail with the kids?
So whoops, sorry.
Yep.
I'm having some computer stuff. So the organization is called Concord Bikes. That's
Okay.
the citizens group that has promoted the Safe Routes program in the town.
Safe Routes Program, that's right.
And
Okay.
the program is implemented by the volunteers in coordination with the Concord Police Department and with each primary school.
Okay,
We're also hoping to include the middle school, although there's lots of challenges with the middle school. So that's going to go slower for sure.
I just wanted to mention that it was brought up and I just wanted to get it right, what was behind it in general.
So I'll send you a note, Mary Beth, with a link to a Facebook page, which has all of the events.
I don't use Facebook. Don't
I
go.
have the email, Phil, that you sent to Nat. So I think we have enough.
Okay, great.
I
So you
just
got
needed it for the minutes so that I was naming it correctly in the minute.
No problem.
Yeah, okay.
And Marcia, you have your hand up.
Just something that you mentioned twice earlier is about recording complaints and different things. And so if you're going to do that, I think you need to identify a way of doing it and who then would take responsibility for that. There's so many people involved and so many different layers. So that's probably a separate conversation for another agenda, but just to be aware that when you say that, that means there's going to have to be identifying who takes that and becomes responsible for it.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that's one of our principles. I'm not
No,
clear.
you just mentioned it as
Yeah,
something that we wanted to do. So
yeah. I don't discount that data is valuable. I probably, as strong a supporter of data as you can find. It would be challenging in this case to get the data. It doesn't mean that when we talk about awareness that we, don't have comments that say, make sure, you report any unsafe behavior. Make sure if you find that you have been injured, nothing prevents us from doing that. And that could be a follow-up activity. Once we approve the principles,
right.
then we could decide and weigh it against those principles for sure.
I just think of the Netherlands and the education process that has taken place over time in their traffic safety or learning how to drive. They are taught to reach with their right arm over their shoulder so that they can make sure that they don't open a door into an oncoming bicyclist. That changed the whole, that has changed the whole way of, so it's education on multiple levels at multiple times. And it's going to be an ongoing, this ongoing effort, your drip concept is going to be an ongoing effort as we move forward.
Wow. Somebody had their hand up.
Oh, just on that, if you start a process to collect data, you are opening up a significant amount of work, et cetera. So one question would be, is there already somewhere where we get data? And the simplest is police reports, right? That might just be, we're going to monitor police reports for anything related to or fire department reports, anything related to any accidents along the trail. That way we don't have to get into the business of collecting data. We're using the sources that are there. But just an idea, because if you just say, oh, well, complaints at bfrt.concordma.gov.
There's I mean,
Someone was smoking a cigarette. Someone was smoking a cigarette on the trail, and it really bothered me. And so you could really, it could turn into a nightmare. We just have to think carefully about it. That's all.
So I'll put on my work hat for a moment. We don't want to be in the business of collecting personal data. I'm just going to tell you that. You don't want to start that. It's really challenging. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
So the only thought I have about that, I agree, we don't want to probably get into the business of collecting data. It sounds a lot more confusing and difficult than, but I wonder if what we want to do is have some responsibility for at least responding to complaints about safety issues. So if somebody says, that fallen tree that's in such and such a location, I almost got killed on that, and my friends did, that we kind of take some responsibility for making sure that gets cleaned up by whoever it is that's supposed to clean it up. And not that it has to come through us, just that when things get directed to us that have to do with safety, such as those the raised island, where someone got hurt. Do we want to at least say, yeah, we will think about, we will respond to it by directing it to the right place, the person who repairs it, or the police, depending on the complaint.
That's now as you're describing it, I feel like you've got the fifth principle. And now the fifth principle is a mechanism to respond to complaints and or information about safety violations or injuries or something. That, not, again, the principles aren't that we're going to do it, but this becomes the lens through which we look through everything. That way, if somebody contacts the town and they say, this just happened on the rail trail, I almost got hurt for all the things you just said, there'll be a mechanism. And so all we're doing is we are going to recommend the principles. The full committee will look at them. Then we take it to the town. The town's going to say, okay, what do you want us to do about this last one, for example? So that's kind of feeling like a principle to me.
How would you frame that principle again? What was the wording?
The means to address complaints and or information regarding injuries or safety issues.
That's a mouthful.
Okay, we need to make it smaller.
Yeah. No, and I think I would recommend that you think about that. Right now, if something does happen, the town is involved. Remember, we're an advisory committee.
Okay.
We only advise. The town really does the heavy lifting, or should I say Marcia and her team do the heavy lifting of keeping the trail going. We are kind of we're the venue for the public to come to when they don't know where to go.
Okay.
And I think a principle might be understanding in order to make better policy or something. But to get it to make a principle, we're going to do something about it, I think is duplicative to what the role of the committee is. And I think maybe one of the things you do over time is you understand from Marcia and the safety officer, well, what happens if you have an accident? Where does the data go? How many of you had? And then if there's something that the subcommittee says, there's a nugget here we probably want to think about. We want to paint the islands bright yellow so nobody does it. So let's think about that a bit. Do some research, and then we bring it to the full committee, and then the committee says to the town, hey, we think this should be done. So it's, I don't think you want to look to make work for yourself, but in this early stage, I think it's really important that you do have these conversations, like, what do we want to try? You know, there may be a couple I'd throw cold water on, just to say, you know, you don't want to get into that process, but it's also, I think this discovery is really important as you think about it. So this is good that you haven't defined a set of principles immediately. I think
Okay,
you're letting them ferment, you know,
Okay,
and like
that's good.
kimchi or pickles or sauerkraut, it's going to be awesome when
Sauerkraut, I like sauerkraut.
you ever made it? I made it once.
I have,
wasn't
I used to make it all the time.
Yeah, it wasn't as good as the store bought, but anyway.
Yeah, now I want to go have a hot dog.
Oh,
Um, sorry, I know it's getting late. And let
I
me,
digress, sorry.
that's okay. So I think we don't need to have a vote. We've already talked about the principles. So I think we are at the point where we talk about potential next steps.
Now we're going to talk about trail design.
And could you be more specific what you mean by that?
Well, I have some concerns about trail design. And we may decide they're not useful, but one of the things I'm thinking about is the road that we're about to do with from Concord to Sudbury. And you're biking along there, maybe by yourself, and you don't have a cell phone, and you have a bad accident. There are no houses. You can't get somewhere. You can't get help very easily. Is that something we need to look into? It's pretty quiet out there. That's one of them. Another thing on trail design is I think we have some problems down by the depot. 3 ways to get across the track, no barriers. People still getting lost where the rail trail really is going. I'm still not sure. Because there's 3 ways to get across the tracks, they get off the rail trail. So that's another trail design kind of problem. So I guess those are my 2 main ones.
Is that a good set of discussions for your next meeting?
Possibly.
I don't know, Deborah, what your committee wants to do in terms of timing, but I think those fit nicely into what led to the charge to create a subcommittee. These kinds of conversations and discussions, I think, are really good.
Yeah, and as I look at our agenda, you know, we've talked about principles. We talked about those big picture concepts that the multi-town meeting came to decide upon. We didn't confirm scope, and really rail trail design is in that scope. So I think that at our next meeting, when we're going to talk about these principles, we should talk about scope, and rail trail design is right there as part of scope. So I would suggest that we take scope and put that into our agenda for next week. We'll decide on the date for the next meeting, and have rail trail design as one of the first components of that scope discussion. Does that make sense?
Me.
Yeah, Mary Beth?
Will we discuss tonight, or maybe table it since it's getting late, what's outside of our scope? Just can we agree on what we're not touching?
Given the time, and by the way, maybe what we should agree before we close is if these meetings go from 7 to 8:30, if they're an hour and 90 minutes, I thought they were 90 minutes, so my apologies. I would suggest that when we talk about scope next time, that we agree on what's outside of scope. For example, the three that I had is wild animals, crime, and weather conditions. There could be others that we think are outside of scope. So that would be my suggestion. When we're talking about scope, we talk about what's outside of scope.
Mhm. Okay,
And
I will just say, kind of, if I can just say one thing, the
Yep.
scope of the overall committee is defined by our charge from the select board. So it's within that, you can then decide what's inside and what's outside.
Mhm.
Marcia can help you with that, right, Marcia? That's why you have your hand up.
Well, that's part of it. I just wanted to say that as a result of the Junction Park report that was submitted to the select board in July, I was asked to also look at the keeping people on the rail trail at Neshoba Brook Bridge. And so elements that we are proposing for Junction Park are going to be suggested to be added at Neshoba Brook, such as planters with screens, pavement markings, and trying to be more specific about the direction of the trail. When it comes to the crossings themselves, the lack of crossing arms coming down, that is an entirely different issue with the MBTA. And if you push it, you will end up getting elevated platforms along the entire length. So I think you're welcome to take that on. It will be a long-term conversation with the MBTA. It's not going to happen anytime soon. It took us 5 times to identify the crossing of the commuter rail with the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. They would not allow it at the existing crossings. So, and that was what they told us is, if you press this, we will put in elevated platforms similar to Acton, and then you'll be looking at how to get people over the elevated platforms from the parking lot to the platform. So I understand the concerns. That's why I was directed to look at adding elements at the northern section of the commuter lot and at Neshoba Brook, at the Neshoba Brook Bridge, and trying to come up with some ways of keeping people on the trail.
thank you for that. I think for our next meeting, then we should just again have this conversation, not only about scope, trail design, but then as a part of that, as an example, the junction area. Marcia, to Nat's point, do you have handy the charge why we're meeting tonight? I don't have that handy. Was there a charge? I think Nat, you were mentioning that.
Yeah, I think it's both on the website. I can just send you a copy of the one from the end of last year. It's on the committee website as well.
And when you say charge for this subcommittee, that's what I was talking about.
No.
Okay.
This is the charge for the overall
Okay, okay,
Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee.
okay.
So
Okay,
if,
good.
it's related to the maintenance and safety around the trail. I mean, you'll see when you read it, a lot of it was tied to the construction part of it, but there is an ongoing piece that we still have a remit for, and that's
Okay,
I don't think you have to worry too much about it. I think if you stray outside the bounds, someone will tell you, either Marcia or somebody
Okay.
else will do that. But
Okay.
I think to Marcia's point, the safety at the crossings in the Junction Park is something that's well on the way. And I think in your role, both here on the safety subcommittee and as committee members, it's it's just keeping an eye on how things are unfolding. And Marcia's done a great job of
Yeah.
moving that piece forward.
okay. So I think what I'm hearing so far is in the minutes, we're all going to see the number one, the signs. That was the first thing that we talked about. And we're not hearing any, great disagreement. You've noted already, Mary Beth, some of the comments. We'll all read that and be able to give any additional thoughts or concerns. Number two, we had talked about at least 4 principles tonight. Again, they'll be in the minutes. We'll all be able to read those and comment back. Then the third thing that I heard is we're going to reconvene again at our next meeting, which we'll decide when that's going to be shortly, at which time we will make our finalize the principles that we want to bring to the full committee. So that will be what we accomplish at our next meeting. We will finalize our recommendations to the full committee based on the Friends signage, etc. So we'll make that as our second outcome of our next meeting. Hopefully those don't take too long, because then number 3, we will confirm scope. And in that scope, we will focus on rail trail design, focus on what's already going on, great amount of great work at Junction Park, and other elements of what we think are in and out of scope. For example, in scope would be making recommendations for awareness. What does that look like? What are the different groups that we can have access to? Who are the groups that we want to speak to? So we'll begin to just simply have, a sketch of what is in and out of scope, rail trail design, awareness, and others. And I think that's all we'll be able to accomplish at our next meeting. Thoughts, comments on that? Okay. My last question is, can we meet again next week? Or is that too much to ask? I won't have people go through calendars, but, I know Nat wouldn't be, I think Nat's away, but.
I'm also away.
Oh, that's right. I knew somebody was. Okay, well then that takes care of that. And you're back after the 9th, I think you said?
I come back on the 9th.
Okay, so I'll send out an email once, after today, and we'll see if we can get some dates beginning the, whenever, 10th, 11th, 12th, whenever, you're sort of back in gear.
The 12th,
yeah.
the 12th is the full meeting, so maybe you
Full
want to
meeting.
see how the full committee reacts to this work, and then set up a meeting after that. Just my suggestion.
So in other words, we don't have to meet before. I figured we should meet again before the 12th. You're saying we don't have to? I was
I
thinking we
don't,
should.
it's your call. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just suggesting that you can try and do that and then be
Okay.
ready for it, or you
Okay.
can take an easier path. I
Mhm.
don't think anything in the world will fall apart if
Okay,
you don't meet before the 12th.
okay,
But it's really up to Dorcas and Mary Beth and you to say, we're okay meeting after the next full meeting, or no, I really want to meet beforehand. So you should
I
pull
see your
committee.
point. And then if we don't, then Dorcas or Mary Beth, since I'm not going to be there on the 12th, you would just report out on the status that we had and get people's reaction. Okay, that sounds good. Let me just open it up one final time to the members of the public, AKA Phil. Any comments before we take any motion to adjourn?
Easy to
I'll just say thanks very much, folks, for taking this subject on. It's hard work and it's really appreciated. So thank you.
Well, thank you for your time as well.
Sure.
We really appreciate it. And just the ability to work, in concert with transportation. I think it's going to add a huge amount of value. So thank you so much.
Of course. Yep.
All righty.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Do we have a motion to
Motion to
adjourn?
adjourn. We
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
I will take a roll call, and I'm noting the time is 8:19. So the motion is on the table to adjourn this meeting. Dorcas Miller,
Aye.
Mary Beth Barker,
Aye.
Debbie Adelman. I also, I to adjourn this meeting at 8:19 p.m. Thank you, Nat. Thank you, Marcia. Really appreciate it. Great meeting. Thank you.